Tina Turner, great philosopher. Sometimes you've got to let everything go. Whatever is bringing you down, get rid of it. Because you'll find that when you're free, your true creativity, your true self comes out. William James, there's but one cause of human failure, and that is man's lack of faith in his true self. So now the lesson, exploring the true self. Kathleen.
Everybody's so quiet. I hope I say something important. Oh my God. So, I was thinking, we finished last weekend was Easter, and I finished up that series of talks about release and embrace. And I thought, well, what am I going to talk about next? And there's so many topics to choose from. I mean, any given day, the number of messages that come forward on Facebook and email and Twitter and all of that stuff, I mean, you could grab a quote from anywhere and you could start a series of talks, right? So I was trying to pinpoint what to do next. And my first thought was to think about working on some series of lessons on forgiveness. I don't think that there's anyone in here who hasn't had to do a little bit of work on forgiveness. Now, if you are one of those people, I'm sorry, most of us have. Forgiveness, but then I moved on and then I thought about prosperity. I've been hearing a very interesting theory about prosperity. Many of us are familiar with the term tithing. And we have heard the phrase, we tithe to where we are spiritually fed. And I heard a guest speaker in one of my classes this week who said, no, we don't tithe to where we're spiritually fed. We tithe to those places that we want to see flourish. We tithe as source. Think about that, okay? So then I'm moving on. And I'm packing, because I'm moving from one apartment to another, not too far away. I'm going to be moving about 5 or 6 blocks away. But this particular apartment has water that works.
It's helpful.
And there's a bathtub, and there's a kitchen. There's a real kitchen. Now I have kind of like a side wall kitchen. But anyway, I'm grateful for what I have, but I'm moving to a new place, and I'm packing things up. And I come across this book. Living Originally by Robert Brummett. Now, Robert Brummett is a teacher at Unity Worldwide Spiritual Institute. He has been a Unity minister for many, many years, and he's written several books. One of his other books is called Finding Yourself in Transition. But this one caught my attention, Living Originally. And so I thought, I can talk about at different, in the series, I can talk a little bit about prosperity and tithing, and I can talk a little bit about forgiveness while tying it all into this. Because this is all about living from the source. God is our source, right? Okay. So, Robert says, most perceived problems stem not from the world, but from a false sense of self. Please understand, he said most. And he also used the word perceived. Most perceived problems. That is 99.9% of my issues. I don't know about you. But it all centers around my perception of what I think you said to me, or what look I think you gave me, or she said that funny, or whatever the case may be. Yeah. On a side note, you want to take the idea of social media and the phones, right? We can do lots of things from our phones now. How many of you have read a tone of voice into a text message? She was nasty on the text. What do you mean? She said hello. Right? But I can say hello, or I can say Hello. And so we read those tones of voice into the text message, and we've got this person on our you-know-what list for absolutely no reason whatsoever, right? It can go the other way, too. We can think everything is hunky-dory, and they're fine with us, and they're saying, nothing is right now. So it's perception. It's what we perceive. And I'm in charge of interpreting that perception. I am in charge of deciding whether you're out to get me or whether you're on my side. I'm in charge of deciding if the universe is out to get me or if it's conspiring for me. I'm in charge. And if I'm in charge, that means you're in charge too. Okay, so Robert writes in his book, to live originally is to live consciously from the ever-present origin of life. It is to live from the very source of all that is. Does that sound empowering?
Yeah.
Right? But in order to do this, I have to be willing to think about this during the course of my day. I can't think about it on a Sunday morning and then go home for 6.5 days until the next Sunday morning. I have to start working on doing this consciously every day. And I would also add, and you've heard me say this before, and release the judgment of self if you think you didn't do well enough that particular day. Don't worry about it. You're doing it. You're doing it. You're doing it. It will get different. And it will feel like it's getting better or it's not getting better, but it will get different. And then the habit forms. And once that habit forms, it's almost like there's no going back. You can't unring the bell. You can't unlearn what you've learned that has resonated with your heart. We can all unlearn some things, right? But what has resonated with truth in my being, that I can't let go of once I've heard it, once it's touched my soul. Okay. So that phrase from the Daily Word that I chose from April 8th of 2017, I am transforming into a brilliant expression of God's love. What does that look like? Like, if this is really true, what could that mean for you? What could that mean in the possibility of your life? What would that look like? It will not look the same for me as it will look for Inga or Sonia or Jen or anybody else here in this room. It will look different for everybody, but it will have a huge effect on the world. But we have to work at it. We have to be willing to do this. There was a time in my life where I heard people say, yeah, we have to transform. And I was terrified. I transform? What are you talking about? I don't know how to transform. I'm not going to be able to do this. Here I am in ministerial school. You guys know me after the fact. You know me. When I got here last March, you know me as the one who was already enrolled in school, had been in school for almost 2 years, was, kind of rolling along, right, with everything. You didn't know me when I went running back to Jim Rosemergy in Fort Myers in April of 2016, going, Jim, make it go away. Make these ideas go away. I don't want to do this. I didn't want to even become a licensed Unity teacher, but I'm doing it, Jim. Don't make me go to ministerial school. And he's like, I'm not making you do anything. It's one of those things that I kind of put aside the idea of I have to transform. I don't need to worry about it. I look at these lessons that come my way. I listen to speakers. We read inspirational quotes, right? We have conversations with our friends where we are both vulnerable and authentic. Those are two of the qualities that I hold most dear to my heart, and I try to be vulnerable and authentic with all of you all of the time. I do my best not to fall apart in front of you, but I'm right there with you. There is no difference between any one of us. We're all on the same playing field. We're all using the same resources, and I have no more resources than you do. I'm just sharing some ideas here. And you're going to take these ideas and you're going to go out there and you're going to go run with it, however that looks for you. But it is about transformation. If I'm going to tap into my true self, I am going to have to transform. And it is like that bud that just can't hold it anymore. I can't stay closed off forever. There is such a magnificent power within each one of us that if we blossom, you are just going to shine from here to kingdom come. And some of us, that scares us. I don't know if I can do that. Was it Marianne Williamson, I think, talked about the fact that it's not the fear of failure, it's the fear of success, right? What if we are really as great as we're saying we are, you know, like what if I really achieve this? Then what? What's that going to look like? So we trust the universe, and we move forward. So the Daily Word talked about transforming a limited belief into an awareness of divine potential. That really makes a big difference. If I have an idea that I am not enough, right, and then I remember my nature is nothing but divinity. My true nature, not my New York nature. I was born and raised in New York City. So it was a little tougher years ago. And it's my true nature is only divine. So when I come up against a limited belief, again, it's my responsibility. I have to do something with that awareness. I can't just say, okay, there's that limited belief, and then just let it sit there. It doesn't feel comfortable anymore. Once I'm aware of it, then it gets really sticky, and then I got to do something about it. And I'll share a trick with you. I've shared this before with this group, but some of you are new, so I'm going to share it again. When I get stuck in a limited belief, what I tend to do is I try to think about what would I tell someone if they came to me for coaching. I have experience as a recovery coach, people dealing with addictions, family members of people who are dealing with addiction. I've coached people in that aspect as well. And so what I would do is I would say, okay, what if my client came to me and said, this is my limited belief. I can't do this, I'm not good enough, I don't have the time. What would I tell them as a life coach? And here's the tricky part, because once I figure out what I would tell them, I have to go into the bathroom and look in the mirror, and then I have to tell it to myself. But that works. I invite you to try that. What would you tell your dear friend if they were challenged in something? You would love them unconditionally. You would give them a hug, maybe. You would encourage them and tell them about all the talents that they have. You would probably tell them you're not unworthy, right? Now you need to go into the restroom, into the bathroom, into the wherever, your bedroom, wherever there's a mirror, look yourself straight in the eye and tell yourself the same thing. It does work. It's very uncomfortable. I'm not going to lie, right? But it works. If you are willing to tell your friends that, you are no different than your friends. We're all one. I can't remind us of that enough. We are all one. If we are all one, we're all connected. We've all got the same mindset. We've all got the same resources. We just have to remember, right? So the reading from that daily word was from 2 Corinthians 3:18. And all of us with unveiled faces, seeing the glory of the Lord as though reflected in a mirror, here's your mirror, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. It's beautiful. When I look in the mirror in the mornings, I gotta admit that there are not every day do I recognize my divinity. Some days I look in the mirror and I'm going, I don't even know if I can get through work today. Holy cow. I don't think I have enough energy to get in the shower right now. And then there are other days that I'm just ready and raring to go, you know. I'm sure you all can relate to that. I'm sure not every day is going to be, you know, perfect in our mindset. William James said, "There is but one cause of human failure, and that is man's lack of faith in his true self." If there's one thing that you leave here with today, believe in your true self. Do everything you can to wrap your head around the fact that there is a true self, and it is magnificent. And if nothing else, remember that what I am saying to you is, I see that true self in every single one of you. In every interaction that we have, I see that true self. You may try to hide it. You may play tough or indifferent, but it's there. And you can't deny it. Dimitri? No. I'm just kidding. I couldn't help it. He was right here. I had to do that. But I can see it. There is this idea that we tend to be able to help others much sooner than we can help ourselves. It's hard to see ourselves clearly, objectively. It's much easier for me to look at another person, look at their set of circumstances, give them the unconditional love, give them, you know, the suggestions, or just be there and sit, whatever the case may be. But to look at self and to see it clearly is just so tough. And that's why I use the trick of what would I tell my friend, what would I tell my client, because in that respect, whatever I am telling someone else, I better be willing to do it myself, or else it means nothing. In the recovery world, there are sponsors, right? Sponsors take their sponsees through the 12 steps of recovery. Okay, so if a sponsor tells a sponsee, you need to go to more meetings, and yet the sponsor is not going to enough meetings, what good is it, right? If a friend is willing to tell somebody else, you know, like you need to take better care of yourself, Kathy. You need to be more gentle with yourself, and then they go home and they beat themselves up over everything they do, then it's not going to be as effective. I have to be willing to follow through on the ideas that I share with other people. Otherwise, they're meaningless. And even if I share it with you and you take it to heart and it helps you, it's not helping me, right? And I think that when we help in any set of circumstances where we help someone, it's going to benefit both of us. You know? And what I have found is that when I work with people or I'm with friends or I'm with my Unity family and we're talking about something, 99% of the time, what we're talking about really pertains to me too. Or it pertains to me and it's going to pertain to the other person very soon. There's this synchronicity that goes on. It just works that way. If we're awake, if we're willing to be conscious of it, all of that stuff. And that's how we transform. That's how that little caterpillar becomes that beautiful butterfly. Although I see mostly butterflies in here already. So I want to share what we're going to do for the next few weeks. And there's going to be a few weeks where I'm not going to be here due to certain circumstances. May 19th, I will not be here. My son is getting married that weekend in New York. I'm so excited. And then a couple of weeks after that, the first 2 Sundays in June 2nd and June 9th, I will not be here because I will be out at Unity Village going through intensive classes for my schooling. I will be going through licensing and ordination interviews, you know, to stay on the path, to make sure that I'm okay, to make sure that they're not going to put me on concern for anything, so nobody call Unity Worldwide about me now. But as the weeks go by, I'm going to continue a series on this book by Robert Brummett because I think it's going to tie a lot of things together. for us. It will touch on prosperity. It will touch on abundance. It will touch on forgiveness. Unlimited forgiveness, I think, is one of them. So let's take a look at what's happening. He's got 10 practices described in this book. And the 5 core practices, the 5 you really got to start with, are radical self-awareness, deep self-acceptance, I didn't put the return in the right place, unlimited forgiveness, universal benevolence, and compassionate communication. Big stuff here, folks. When you see the word radical in front of anything, look out. Just telling you now. There's a book out there called Radical Generosity. It's a really great book about being generous and so on. I think it's really geared towards corporations, but I remember after reading the book a few years ago, I remember thinking radical, oh my gosh. Jesus was radical. So that'll tell you something. But radical self-awareness, self-acceptance, unlimited forgiveness. I mean, these are his core practices, and I'll go into them. I'll probably do 2 at a time each Sunday. So next Sunday we'll start with the radical self-awareness and the deep self-acceptance. And when the week rolls around for the power of the month, we'll tie the power into it. But I want to stick with this because I think this is powerful, and it was one of the books that wasn't packed in a box. So, this is what you go with. The other 5 practices are special practices. These will tell you something. Everything is my teacher. Eek. Even those, uncomfortable situations. Eek. Dancing with chaos. Anybody live with chaos in their life from time to time? We're going to learn how to dance with it. Yeah. Death is my advisor. Ooh. Living in the heart of desire. And I am the author of my life. So these are some of the things that we're going to be talking about. And I'm excited because I think that it's going to give us a lot to think about. I think it's going to give us a direction to move in. This really is, if you're on a spiritual journey of any kind, you're looking at some sort of transformation. Yes? No limit to where you can go, what you can do, who you can be. There is no limit. There is no judgment on where you can go, what you can do. If something comes to mind during this process, as you're focusing on transforming, something comes to mind, if the first thought is, oh, I could never do that, then you better hold on to that idea because we got to talk about it further. Okay? Those are the ones, like me. Jim, make it go away. Make it go away. I hope he doesn't tell you, but he's coming here this summer. He's going to be here again. I don't know exactly when, but he will be here traveling July, August, September, somewhere in there. And so he'll be up here, and I've talked him into speaking. You have to, Jim, for me. But yeah, make it go away. Those are the ideas that we really have to pay attention to. So anyway, that's our focus. Transformation. And it doesn't have to be major either. It can be the small transformations that make all the difference in the world too. So, buckle up, buttercups. You're in for the ride that you have always been looking for, right? And we'll do it together. We'll have some fun along the way. You know I like to laugh, so that's the focus. I'm going to take these ideas into meditation and see what comes up for you in exploring the true self. Patty or Marguerite, if you could shut the light switch, please. Thank you. Awesome. And I just invite you now to get comfortable in your seat. If you can, it's best to take the things off your lap, put them to the side somewhere if you can. You can close your eyes, you don't have to, but you can close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. And then just take a couple of deep breaths. Slow, deep, steady breaths. You're breathing in Spirit's blessings. And on the exhale, you're breathing out divine love. We fill this room with that energy. Divine energy. We are focused on living originally to transform our lives. Take another deep breath and relax into this moment. I am transforming into a brilliant expression of God's love. I am transforming, becoming aware of my true self. Becoming aware of the true self. The absolute truth of being. I focus on living consciously from the ever-present origin of life. Source. I am transforming into a brilliant expression of God's love. And take this into the silence. I am ready, focused on transforming into a brilliant expression of God's love. I am aware of this true desire coming from within, from my heart. It is filled with love. I believe. I can do this. I am one with the source of all that is. And I have the ability to tap into any and all resources necessary to transform into that brilliant expression of God's love. I am committed to this transformation I am capable of this transformation. I am so ready. And so grateful. And so it is. Amen. I invite you to take a couple of deep breaths now before you open your eyes and just come back to this time and place. When you're ready, you may open your eyes.